So DJI has released their smallest ever gimbal for mirrorless cameras, the RS3 Mini, and I cannot believe how much weight it holds. Can you believe how much weight you hold? Well, now you're just showing off. Let's talk about it. Ooh. So first off, this is not sponsored. Nobody sent this to me. I just went out and I bought the gimbal because I was curious about it. And the other DJI gimbals are a little too big for the things that I want to do. So I figured I'd try out the old RS3 Mini. And this is a very impressive gimbal. There are some drawbacks to the gimbal. We will get to that in a minute. But let's get to the impressive part, which is a whole lot. So on my little scale here, I get about 1,000 grams when you include the gimbal and the little feet and the base plate itself, and that is usually what I walk around carrying. So I will say that it is about 1,000 grams, but it can support 4.4 pounds. So you can put on like say an A7S III and a 24-70 2.8 G Master. I don't even have a combination that heavy right now. This is my Tamron 28-75 f2.8 and my A7 III. Is all of the lenses that I have in my house and all of my camera bodies are supported by this gimbal. It balances no problem at all. It holds them all. It is extremely impressive. You got a nice 1.4-inch touchscreen on the back here. It is very responsive. So on the front here, you have a little scroll wheel that can be assigned to different things. I have it assigned to the roll right now. And then of course there's a little trigger. Press that twice and then it goes back to the stationary position, the starting position. You press it 3 times and you will go into selfie mode, which is something I like to do because I like to show myself all of the time. Press it twice again and it will just go back. Of course, you have a joystick on the back to control all of it, and then a mode button and a record button. A record button that will work with pretty much all of the cameras because this thing has Bluetooth, and the Bluetooth works very well. Very easy to set up. You just swipe down on the menu here. You just connect your camera. You don't need the DJI app or anything like that. And then you can control various functions. Now, my Sony cameras, the A7 IV, I have the FX30 and the ZV-E10, and this here as well, the A7 III. I have a lot of Sony cameras. It really only controls the recording, starting and stopping. Now you can, like Brandon Lee showed in his video, if you haven't seen that, watch it after you've watched mine. Of course, you can remap the record button on your actual camera to do something like autofocus to manual focus is what he does. So he'll put it in autofocus, and then when he thinks things are going to cross his field of view that will take the camera's focus away from the object he wanted, he'll press the record button, which is now an autofocus to manual focus switch, and then he'll put it into manual focus, which is pretty cool. But I've been just using it for, you know, recording, pressing start and stop because I'm a simple man. You can connect the USB-C cable to get some extra functions in your Sony cameras, well, at least the Sony cameras that I have that control things like ISO and aperture and the shutter speed. But the thing is, you can only control one at a time when you assign it to the scroll wheel. I like the scroll wheel to be my roll anyway. So for me, I don't like connecting wires when this is a travel gimbal. It's a small gimbal. I don't want to also be connecting wires to get some small functionality like one of the things, you know, because if you wanted to go through your aperture, your shutter speed, and ISO, you would have to reassign the button 3 different times and go through it. It's not worth it to me. I just fool around with my settings on my camera, and I use the Bluetooth for the starting and stopping, and then I leave my scroll wheel as my little, you know, roll wheel. So like many gimbals these days, it has an auto calibration function. So after you have balanced your gimbal, which is quite easy on this, I must say, it's one of the best gimbals I've ever used to balance. And once you balance it, which is easy, you go into the auto calibration mode, press the button, and then it will gauge the weight for you. So everything will be perfect. But then it has one more thing in the app about the balancing. Let me show you now. Let me just show you. Here is the app right here. And if you go in here, you see this has balance test right there. And it's very cool. It gives you a lot of confidence in the gimbal. It says just put it at a little bit of an incline right here. Now begin your test, and the camera will begin testing how well you balanced your gimbal. And I'm doing this live right now on camera. So we're going to find out if I did, in fact, balance my gimbal well. I'm a little bit nervous right now, but I'm a professional. I know I did it right? Let's find out. Oh, excellent all around, 3 excellents. So now I know this gimbal is perfectly balanced, which I knew anyway, because I'm me. I think that is a super cool feature. Now, if you go into Create, you have things like the virtual joystick, where you get some tactile feedback, and then you can just recenter right there. That little record button will start and stop your camera if you have the Bluetooth connected, and you can adjust the speed and the smoothness as well. Now, this is what I was doing at the beginning when it was talking to me here. I was in Force Mobile, so you can just enable the Force Mobile, and then your phone controls the movement. Now I'll just recenter that right there, and you can decide if you want any of it to move. Like for me, for the beginning of the video, when I was just nodding up and down, I just wanted the tilt to be in place. But if you just wanted it to be the pan, you could just do that and just, close all of the other functions. And you can just take off Force Mobile, and then I'll press the button twice here to put it back. So I think that's very cool. Panoramas, you want to take some photos, you let this guy do the panorama for you. It's got this cool time-lapse function here where you can just add points on the actual camera. I can use the virtual joystick to add a second point, and then I'll go down here and I'll add a third point, and then I can just start my shooting, and it will take the time lapse for me. I just did it all right here from the app. You hear that? Do my time lapse for me. Then you have tracking, and that is pretty similar to time lapse, except that you can just do it with your video, and especially if you want to do like things that look like slider shots or whatever, just add your points here. Change my virtual joystick, add another point here, and I'll go down here. I think I did the exact same pattern for both, but I'll add a fourth one this time. Oh man, gonna throw it a loop right there. And then you can just press record, and then the camera will go through that sequence that you just planned out, and then you don't have to do anything, and it's going to be super smooth because the camera's doing it, not your dumb, clumsy hand. There's also a way to connect a gaming controller. If you wanted to do that, you kids today playing your video games, you may be more comfortable with something like that, and then you can change some of the camera settings depending on your particular camera that you have connected to it right here. You got your motor parameters here. You can change the stiffness here. You can do the auto tuning right here from the app, the status, and show all of the things that you are doing right now. Your checklist for it. The app has a lot of really great things. User profile. So a user profile, when you're in the app for M1, M2, and M3, you can set it up to have a custom profile. And so this M2 right now, I have it in the 3D roll, in case I want to do that Alfred Hitchcock thing, or maybe I want to take a time lapse of the night sky with some stars, and have it swirl around like that. And I have the M3 set up differently as the pan follow right there. And also with the 3D roll, you could do the portrait mode. We'll talk about portrait mode in a second because you can physically do a portrait mode on this, but you could also just use the 3D roll and hold it here if you wanted to do the tick-tocking and the booty popping. You know what I mean? But, we'll just put that up right. There's a better way to do the vertical content, which is a big thing for this guy. We'll talk about that now. So this thing does have a proper vertical video mode, and vertical video, apparently that is the way everything's going. This long form 16:9 content that I'm doing now, I shouldn't even be doing it anymore apparently. So you just take the plate off here, and then you can take the bottom plate off on the bottom here. And then you just slide this guy up top here. And then you just put your camera right back on here, and now you have vertical video mode. Now you do have to rebalance once you've done that, but you kids out there with your TikTok, and look at this, huh? A TikTok machine for you. DJI has you covered when you want to do the whatever it is you do with vertical video. Somebody tell me what I'm supposed to do, please. So there's also a little mount here where you can grab another handle at an additional cost for extra stability and to do things like briefcase mode a lot easier. And so that'll be a nice accessory that I probably would pick up if I was going to get this gimbal, which I did get, so I probably should pick up that accessory. So a couple of things I really like is if you hold down the trigger button, it just locks the gimbal in place. So I like that, So normally I'm here in pan tilt, and but if I want to just go, hey, I like this shot. I'm going to lock it off. Just hold down the trigger and there you go. Also, if you hold down the mode button, it goes into sport mode, which is extra responsive for your movements. So it's the opposite of the lock. It responds to your movements even more if you're holding down the M. You can also lock the little LCD screen by swiping down so that you don't accidentally start pressing things on the screen once you don't want to. So what are the things I don't like about this gimbal? Well, it doesn't have the Raven eye, which is too bad because you can buy that extra, and for the other RS3 models, it will work. But the Raven eye can you just drag it over on your face and it will track you around as you move. That's really cool. I would have liked that to have been on this guy, but it is not. Also, this is a smaller, lighter weight gimbal that is often carrying heavier things. So you are going to see bob on the Z axis. It is going to bob up and down unless you are extremely good at the old ninja walk. And you got to be Brandon Lee-esque and walk without getting those bumps. And you can do it. Now, I took the first couple of times I took this out is the winter here in Canada. I was wearing my regular winter boots and they are stiff. They don't have a lot of give. So it was very hard for me to do that soft heel to toe walk. And I was getting a lot of up and down movement with this guy, as you would expect. When I switched to softer boots, I was able to mitigate that quite nicely. And if you have a Sony camera, one of the newer ones that have the gyro data, of course, you could just put on like maybe a 5% crop in Catalyst Browse, and then you can just smooth out your footage that way. But since you're buying a gimbal, you would rather not do that. So I would say you practice walking smooth. Don't put on heavy winter boots that are too stiff, and yeah, you practice your movements, but you will probably see some up and downs, especially if you're walking casually. So this is really, really good if you're doing things like 120 frames per second or even 60 frames per second, and you're slowing it down a little bit in post. Then you have, I think, an absolutely fantastic combination. And but if you think you can just walk casually down the street with this guy and expect it to be super smooth footage, it is not going to be like that. The gimbal will not compensate for the up and down. They don't, most of them anyway, but this one in particular, you will notice it because it is a smaller, lightweight gimbal. And lastly, the fact that it doesn't pack up that small. It's a pretty small gimbal, but it doesn't do the thing like the other RS3s where all of the arms collapse onto itself, because it just doesn't have room to do that. So you can do like this half collapse thing. So this is the half fold method right here, and that is as good as you can do in terms of the compact size. As far as I can see, you take off the little tripod feet, you can just put that into a bag. Not bad. You can put that into one of your side shoulder bags, something like that, or just strap it to the side if you want. It is still definitely not as compact as something like a Zhiyun Crane M3. However, this guy does hold a lot more weight. You see, this is the Zhiyun Crane M3, and although they're fairly similar in size on the base, the arms are much larger here on the Ronin, which allows it to carry those big, heavy cameras and lenses, but the Zhiyun definitely is much more convenient when you are trying to put it in a little camera bag. And if you want to go crazy with the compact small size, this is the Crane M2S from Zhiyun. So if you have a little ZV-E10 and 11 millimeters from Sony, which I think is the best vlogging combination you can get, you could balance it on this tiny little guy, and it is such a pleasure to use. So for me, the Crane M3 still has a place because a lot of my cameras go with this. The ZV-E10 and pretty much all of the lenses I use with that can be handled by the Crane M3, as well as my FX30, my Sigma 16mm, which I take out a fair bit. This thing can handle those just fine, so I like that it has a small size, small footprint, and I actually find the Z-axis, it's a little less noticeable on this guy right here. I think Zhiyun does a little bit better job with the bobbing. But the thing is, I do have the luxury of having a lot of gimbals and being able to pick and choose. But if you were just trying to buy one gimbal to suit many, many different cameras, I mean, this thing is the way to go. It is still not even much bigger than this guy. Small, compact, fantastic app, fantastic features. It can support pretty much whatever you're going to throw at it in terms of a small, lightweight gimbal. Now, if you're going to get a red cinema camera, go get, the DJI RS3 Pro. But if you're going with regular mirrorless setups like us mortals over here, this is one of the best buys that you can have. At $369, that is a pretty good deal for the amount of things that you can do with this gimbal. Anyway, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, write down below what is your favorite gimbal and why, and I will be sure to ignore your comment. Talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.